Have you ever gotten advice from someone you really admire, only to realize later it didn't sit right with you? Like, deep down, it just felt off. Maybe it even kind of stung. But at the same time, those words stuck in your head and made you look at your life in a totally new way? I think we've all been there. Sometimes advice can be uncomfortable, even offensive, but it still forces you to stop, think, and maybe even change the way you see things. Now imagine that advice coming from someone like Michael Jackson. That's not just advice from a friend, that's advice from one of the biggest stars on the planet. And not only that, it's advice that completely flipped how Donny Osmond saw his career and his future. What Michael told him was bold. It was shocking. And yeah, by today's standards, Donny himself even admitted it was kind of offensive. But here's the twist. Those words ended up being a turning point in Donny's career. And that's the story I want to share with you today. Because it's one of those behind-the-scenes moments that fans don't usually hear about. It's the kind of story that makes you stop and ask yourself, would I have taken that advice? Or would I have done what Donny did, take it in, reject it, and then carve out my own way forward? So let's go back in time for a second. Picture the 1970s. Donny Osmond is at the peak of his teen idol days. He's got the smile. He's got the voice. He's got those perfectly polished performances. And let's not forget, he had millions of fans, mostly teenage girls, screaming his name wherever he went. He was living the dream, right? But here's the thing about fame, it's a double-edged sword. Being the heartthrob, being the poster boy, being the guy every kid wants to be and every girl wants to date, it sounds amazing. But once the world puts you in that box, it is really hard to climb out of it. And Donny knew this. He could feel it happening. As he grew older, he started to notice people weren't taking him seriously anymore. He was still talented. He was still passionate. But to a lot of people, he was just that clean-cut boy from the Osmond family singing bubblegum pop songs. And let's be honest, that image can become a trap. You get stuck in it. No matter how much you want to show the world you've grown, they keep pulling you back into who they remember you as. Now, does that sound familiar? Maybe not with fame, but think about life in general. Sometimes people lock us into an image of who we were. Maybe you were the shy kid in school. Or maybe you were always known as the funny one or the quiet one. And even when you've changed, even when you've grown up, people still see you through that same old lens. It can feel frustrating, right? That's exactly where Donny was. Now enter Michael Jackson. By this point, Donny and Michael were friends. They understood each other in a way that most people couldn't, because they had lived through the same kind of crazy childhood. Both of them had been child stars. Both had been teen idols. Both had dealt with the pressure of being in the spotlight before they were even old enough to really understand it. So when they talked, it wasn't just two entertainers chatting, it was two people who truly got each other. And during one of those conversations, Michael said something to Donny that stopped him in his tracks. He gave him advice that, at first, Donny didn't even know how to respond to. Michael basically told him, if you want to stay successful, you've got to do something shocking. You've got to make people talk. Even if it's for the wrong reasons. Now think about that for a second. Imagine being Donny Osmond, hearing those words from Michael Jackson, the king of pop himself. On the one hand, this is someone you admire. Someone who has reached levels of success that most people could only dream of. You want to listen. You want to take his advice seriously. But on the other hand, that advice just feels wrong. For Donny, it was offensive. The idea of chasing controversy, of keeping your name alive by doing something scandalous, just didn't sit right with him. It went against who he was, and it went against the kind of career he wanted to have. But here's the interesting part. Even though Donny rejected the advice, even though it stung, it forced him to think about his career in a way he hadn't before. Because let's be real, Michael wasn't entirely wrong. In the entertainment world, shock value works. Controversy works. We see it all the time. How many celebrities do you know who stay in the headlines not because of their talent, but because of the drama surrounding them? It happens constantly. Whether it's a wild stunt, a shocking statement, or a scandal that has people glued to their screens, attention, even the negative kind, can keep your career alive. And Michael had figured that out early on. But Donny didn't want to play that game. That advice forced him to ask himself a tough question. Did he want to chase fame at all costs, even if it meant becoming someone he wasn't? Or did he want to take the harder road, rebuilding his career in a way that stayed true to his values? And that's where the turning point happened. Donny realized he didn't want to rely on controversy to stay relevant. He didn't want to be known for shock value. Instead, he wanted to build a career based on authenticity, on talent, on growth. So he doubled down on himself. He worked harder. He expanded his skills. He reinvented himself, not through scandal, but through persistence and dedication. That choice eventually led him to Broadway, where he proved himself as a serious performer. It led him to television, where he became a charismatic host. And it led him to a career that spanned decades, not just a few years of teen idol fame. That one moment, hearing advice that felt offensive, and deciding to go in the opposite direction, literally changed everything. And here's where the lesson comes in, not just for Donny but for all of us. Sometimes the advice we get, even if it's coming from someone we admire, isn't the right advice for us. Sometimes it clashes with who we are. And that's okay. Because those moments give us clarity. They help us see more clearly what we don't want. And in a way, that can be just as powerful as the advice we do follow. Think about it in your own life. Have you ever had someone tell you, here's what you need to do, and deep down you thought, no, that's not me? Maybe someone told you to take a job you didn't love, or to follow a path that didn't excite you, or to act a certain way to fit in. And maybe you didn't take that advice. Maybe you went with your gut instead. And even though it was harder, it led you somewhere better. That's exactly what Donny experienced. Now, just to be clear, Michael Jackson wasn't trying to lead Donny astray. He was sharing what he had learned, in his own way. And like I said, there's truth to it. Controversy can keep people talking. But Donny realized that wasn't the legacy he wanted. He wanted respect. He wanted longevity. And most of all, he wanted to stay true to himself. And you know what? It worked. Donny Osmond's career today speaks for itself. He's lasted in an industry where most teen idols fade away. He's proven himself in music, theater, television, and more. And he's earned a kind of respect that no scandal could ever buy. So, here's the takeaway. You don't always have to follow the rules of success that other people give you, even if those people are legends. The most important thing is to decide what success means to you, and then build your path around that. And now I want to flip the question to you. If a famous person, someone you admired, gave you advice that went totally against your gut, would you take it? Or would you trust yourself enough to walk away from it? Think about that for a second, and let me know in the comments. Because at the end of the day, the advice we don't take, sometimes that ends up shaping our lives even more than the advice we do. And if you enjoyed this story, I think you'll love my other video on the untold struggles of child stars. It dives deep into what life behind the spotlight is really like, and trust me, it'll open your eyes. So check that out next. And hey, if this video gave you something to think about, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss out on more stories like this one. Because there are so many lessons hidden in these real-life moments. Sometimes the advice that feels the most uncomfortable ends up being the spark that changes everything.